Projectile motion. Projectile motion is a two-dimensional motion of the body under the influence of the Earth's gravity. It includes both the horizontal and vertical component of motion. The components are treated independently. Projectile is the one that refers to the object that is being thrown. Trajectory refers to the path traveled by the projectile. And parabola refers to the shape of the path traveled by the projectile. Height is the maximum vertical distance reached by the projectile. Range is the maximum horizontal distance reached by the projectile. For the components of projectile, in horizontal component, the velocity is uniform or constant all throughout the traveled path of the projectile. Therefore, the value of initial horizontal velocity is the same with its final horizontal velocity, and since there is no change in velocity, acceleration is equivalent to 0. So for example, if your initial horizontal velocity is equivalent to 10 meters per second, therefore, your final horizontal velocity is also equivalent to 10 meters per second. The vertical component of a projectile motion can be regarded as UAM, or uniformly accelerated motion. Specifically, it follows the idea and concept of a free fall, where g, or acceleration due to gravity, is equivalent to negative 9.8 meter per second squared. Negative implies the direction. So as the projectile is moving upward, the velocity is decreasing until it reaches the velocity which is equivalent to 0. And that is the time where the projectile reaches its maximum height. And then, as the projectile is moving downward, the velocity is now increasing. There are two kinds of projectile motion. The first kind is the one that is thrown horizontally. In this case, your initial velocity along the vertical is always equivalent to 0. The second case is the one that is thrown at an angle. In this case, there will be an angle. In my example, it is 45 degrees. There will also be an initial velocity along the horizontal and an initial velocity along the vertical. For the same initial and final elevation, and for the absence of air resistance, what angle of projection will result to the maximum range reached by the projectile? The answer is 45 degrees. For the same initial and final elevation, and for the absence of air resistance, what two angles of projection will result to the same range reached by the projectile? The answers are 30 degrees and 60 degrees. In the absence of air resistance, for instance, we have a free-falling body and a projectile thrown horizontally. Both of them are dropped simultaneously at the same time at the same height. Which do you think will reach the ground first? The answer is, both of them will reach the ground at the same time. Simply because in projectile motion, the components, the vertical and horizontal, are treated independently.